I have always believed that when there is a problem, you should try and find the most simple solution to that problem. Unfortunately, for all of us, the developers of Star Citizen do not believe that. Whether it is because of hubris or incompetence, I do not know. But they always believe that they just simply know better, despite seemingly having no MMO game experience or game dev experience whatsoever.
So this is a very, very tiring emotional take that we have heard for a while from people in the comments, some other content creators. And man, going in emotionally tilted is not how you attack a topic, especially if you're hoping to appeal to any sort of rationale or people who just appreciate actual good points. What's going on, everybody? So I'd imagine, like me, a lot of you probably watch YouTube or enjoy taking in other forms of content while you're playing the games you enjoy. I was doing that this morning while playing, here, as you see me, and BuzzCutPsycho's video came up to my recommendeds, his opinion on CIG's armor changes being a disaster. I watched it. It took some effort, but I got through it, and mulled it over a bit and realized, I have a hard time with bad arguments going unchallenged. So what we're going to do is I am here just playing the game. I've got his YouTube video. I'm going to let him say his piece, make his statements, and then I will pause his video and give my thoughts to play devil's advocate for CIG and just give a different perspective. So this isn't meant to, target Buzz directly. This is just a general statement about content creators. I'm tired of the crying, the complaining, the whining. And it seems like they're just kind of pandering to their audience that are just enraged by whatever the heck has happened or whatever new change they don't like or some state of the game or some rumor they've heard or some idea they have. And I'm at a point where I'm ready to step in the ring and talk about these things. Give you guys a different perspective. Give you my perspective. The other side. You don't have to agree with me. You might not. You guys might hate this video. Let me know down below. All videos mentioned in this one will be linked down below. I encourage you guys to go watch them yourselves, form your own opinions, and let me know what you think. The unfortunate little habit of attacking the devs, of assuming incompetence or arrogance or just ignoring players is frankly ludicrous and becoming of a child, not of an adult that is actually giving this more than surface level thought. You should think about a few things. You should think about where the game is now versus where it was 10 years ago. I have spoken with plenty of people who remember the good old days of Hangar Citizen, where you could just interact with your ship and hangar, push a few buttons, compared to what we have now with Stanton, Nix, and Pyro, all of the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes with that. Those of you who've been following me for long enough know that I will give it to you straight. Problems, good side, bad side, everything. But I typically tend to do so with a bit more level-headed approach, actually critiquing things from a place of reason versus apparently just kind of lashing out because something isn't going the way that you want it to go. Most of these folks who make these criticisms about the competence level of the devs probably don't have an iota of experience in actually developing a game, or if they do, they did at some surface level, or they were in a project that did not attack it to this degree. Whatever the reason for the assault, someone like me is more likely than not gonna dismiss it as the complaints of a child than take something seriously like you would in a conversation that goes beyond, I don't like this thing they did, they suck.
When the initial armor changes came out, where certain weapons simply could not hurt armor types of a certain class, this was a simple solution and a step in the right direction that needed some tweaking and more testing. Instead of that, we got an over-the-top knee-jerk reaction where we have this bizarre damage-gating armor system, whatever the hell they want to call it. But to explain it in the most simple way possible, if a certain weapon can match the armor level of another ship, you can then begin to strip the armor. And once that armor is stripped, you can now do full damage to the ship.
I guess the idea of knee-jerk overreactions kind of fits right in with the emotional insults against the devs' competence levels. But when you think about all the changes that have come to flight models and combat, any change that's made, if you don't like it enough, it's very easy for you to say, oh, this was an overcorrection, oh, this was a knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, they messed everything up, it shouldn't be like this. But you probably got people on the other side who are willing to say, no, actually, this is a lot better, or this is a step in the right direction, or maybe they are figuring out how things are going. They're testing, they're breaking things, they're trying again. That's what's happening here with damage mitigation, with engineering coming into the game, with crafting. All of this is a continuously evolving product. Now, as Buzz described, I guess initially they had a method to where if your gun wasn't big enough or strong enough to enact any sort of damage against armor, then it just was a no-go. It was a hard stop. It was a hard counter, as he'll say. But now, it appears, counter to that, we have the ability to, with a certain weapon, like a strong enough ballistic or laser cannon, weaken armor to a point to where eventually smaller weapons or other types like Gatlings, repeaters and such can start to do damage actually becomes a viable method versus you just getting that hard rejection that just nope, you're not getting through. I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely prefer the latter. I wouldn't want a hard counter. A hard counter is how you end up with just flat out biasing toward one direction of gameplay, which causes further imbalance. And if you disagree, please let me know. I mean, same to Buzz. If he happens to see this by some chance, maybe explains it a little bit better. But I prefer in the world of Star Citizen for there to be a method of soft counters because it's not one-sided. This isn't a game where you're going to have just one side using a strategy that wins and the other side always losing. If that happens, the people who are always losing are not learning. They're not adapting. They're not changing their method. There are a couple of videos that I hope you guys go check out by Danverus, who's actually done the testing on this new armor system. And I think he shows in a pretty good way how much effort it actually takes to wear down armor to the point to where other weapons can do damage. It isn't like you can just bring out a big ship or some ship that can counter stuff, hit it a couple of times, and then now you can go to town with a bunch of light fighters and just win the day. That's not how reality works. Time to kill is quite a bit longer across the board, especially if you're using smaller than necessary ballistics weapons. That's one of the reasons I'm actually running a repeater laser cannon combo. Even against these smaller ships, they will eat up small size ballistics. I'm sure these Pisces and cutters aren't so bad, but if you get a prospector or a terrapin and you're trying to hit it with size 3 or below ballistics gatlings, you're going to be there a while. You're probably going to have to step away and actually reload. I had that happen in this ship. I had a Revenant on the nose and I had 2 Shredder repeaters under each wing, or what, 1 under each wing, 3 weapons total, going up against a terrapin, and I unloaded everything. Everything. I had to go back to my station, grab some deadbolts, and then come back to finish the job. That is a wild difference that gives especially players of less fighting competence or less fighting experience the chance to survive, the chance to get away. That is a balance that later in Buzz's video he actually mentions, and it seems to maybe he doesn't like that. Maybe he wants the lesser experienced players to get bullied by a skilled group of light fighter pilots.
Players in favor of a faster time to kill, meaning things die quicker, typically want this because it allows smaller groups of better, more skilled players to individually counter larger groups of less skilled players, because it's less time on target and it's more about how quickly and individually you can damage and take out another opponent. If the TTK is longer, meaning it takes longer to kill something, the power shifts towards organization and teamwork, because the larger group of less skilled players who are better coordinated can more effectively focus fire and display their organization as opposed to their individual skill.
I don't know, he seems to contradict himself or create a double standard.
So now, instead of having bigger ships be completely and totally immune to ships with smaller weapons, we now simply have to bring one ship capable of stripping that armor, and then every ship, regardless of weapon size, can do damage to it as if the armor was not there.
And even if it were as simple as he's trying to make it sound here, do you really think that those light fighters with those size 1 to 3 weapons, maybe size 4 if you're running like a Wolf or Talon or something, you think it's going to be a quick task to take down the big ship in question? Absolutely not. I mean, if you're thinking about ships like Perseus and up, Polaris and Idris, nah, dude. Trust me, even in 4.6, in my video where I had essentially captured an Idris, that was still a 2-hour fight. I had them locked down. We had another Idris, we had another Polaris join in, we had all the fighters and gunships you could imagine, and it was still a 2-hour fight, and there were 2 dudes on that Idris. Just 2, not fully crewed, which is another part we got to talk about. So the idea that you can just come in with an Ares or 2 and do enough damage to strip the armor and then just come in with a squad or 2 of light fighters and end the battle, or, you know, end the session or ruin the guy's day or whatever the case. Nah, dude, that's not the case. Especially if you actually have fighters on the Idris' side, or I don't know, a fully crewed ship. That is something that I feel like gets lost in translation quite a bit with these arguments, because it seems to bias towards there being one person on the ship, whether it's a Corsair, a Connie, an Asgard, stepping up into, like, you know, Perseus. If you're solo flying a Hammerhead, there are other issues there we got to talk about. But the common denominator here, and he mentions this later with force multipliers, is that if they're properly crewed with even base level competence, it becomes a very challenging thing for even good dogfighters to deal with. You got one guy or even 2 people in a Gladius trying to take down a Paladin that actually has a decent turret gunner and a decent pilot. That is not going to be easy. Same if you're going up against Hurricanes or Scorpius. You know, these ships, when they actually have their full capabilities realized, are not easy to deal with. And to imagine a sort of perfect or worst case scenario, depending on what side you're taking of this, that you're just going to have like an armada of Gladius or Arrows versus a single Polaris or Idris. It's a very weak argument to try to make a point that doesn't stand on its own, and that is the title of his video, that the current armor changes are a disaster. I don't think so. I think these current armor changes are awesome. I like that it takes more tactic, more effort, just more strategy in general to actually put down an enemy, even down to the smaller ships. Light fighters across the board seem to be pretty similar to deal with like in previous patches, but when you start getting up into medium and heavy fighters, armor becomes a pretty big part of the equation there, especially if you got a competent guy in the seat of that heavy fighter that knows how to extend and pull you into his gun range and do the fight that way. There's so much more nuance and detail that goes into this that just highlights how ridiculous it is to try to say that the development behind this is incompetent or arrogant or not listening or doesn't know what they're doing, and just reinforces that, you know, maybe if you're feeling emotionally charged, you should wait to cool off and think about it before you make a video on the topic. That said, there isn't a whole lot else in this video that really stands apart from his main point about the armor and his appeal to authority and, you know, his experience with older games that, you know, en masse used a weaker weapon that could lock on to wipe out the entire field. Again, not a good way to argue. You're dealing with equivocation fallacies, appeals to authority that don't mean anything, they don't carry over, they don't translate to the type of game that Star Citizen is. And if I sound like I'm glazing Star Citizen or the devs, you know, that is your interpretation. Please challenge what I've said in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think. That's how I also expand my understanding of the overall community when we're talking about this stuff. Let me know how this stuff makes you feel or what you think about armor changes. I know a lot of you haven't played 4.7 yet, so you haven't really experienced it. I will say, if the concern is being worried about being pirated or being ganged up on by this light fighter meta phantom that exists, the boogeyman in the background, there are so many ways that you yourself as a player can make yourself a hard target. You can learn how to dogleg your travels, not travel in straight lines, learn where pirates tend to congregate, learn how to quickly evade, learn how to prioritize your target threats, maybe just get better at fighting for those cases that you do have to fight. I mean, because we play in a universe here where there is going to be PvP, where there are going to be authentic player encounters, and you have to know in that fight or flight moment, do I bail or do I commit to this? You know, if you see a squad of light fighters, or if you see in the global chat that say like, hey, OM1's being camped at Crusader, maybe don't go there. Hop shards, change systems, maybe, again, dogleg your routes so you're not going in a straight line and can't get ganged up on. You know, there are so many ways to make yourself a harder target and to adapt to the ever-changing metas and battle strategies in this game. And the great thing is that the larger ships that you're in now, you have a better chance of getting away because you can take a lot more damage. You know, the little Arrow or Gladius comes up to your Carrack, they're going to be hitting you like a bug on a windshield, and it's going to be kind of funny. I wouldn't get overconfident there. Uh-oh, I hope that missile doesn't hit the guy I'm trying to protect. That'd be bad. I wouldn't get overconfident and just assume that you can tank all damage. Like, you still got to be smart, but this is just such an overreaction to something that is really not that big a deal in the long run, because it is going to continue to evolve and change as feedback comes through. But I do think it's a step in the right direction. I mean, ask yourselves this. Is it better in 4.7 than it is in 4.6? Time to kill is longer. It takes more effort to get through armor. From, again, ships from small to large sizes. Again, check out Danverus' videos on all the armor tests that he's doing as well for added context for all of this. So, like, it's harder to kill people. Ballistic weapons are not as effective as they are in 4.6, especially Gatlings and repeaters and such, especially below size 4. So if your metric of success or change in a positive way is lasting longer, or it taking longer to kill you, you having more survivability, then sweet, this is better. If you are in that solo John Wick light fighter meta crowd that is upset that you can't as quickly take out other ships of all sizes, also let me know what your thoughts are. I like that as a fighter pilot, it is more challenging. I invite that. I'm not the guy that's going to go bullying new players and then act like I'm an ace because I killed a guy in a prospector that didn't know any better. Like, now that prospector with all of its added armor's got a chance to get the hell out of there and soil that pirate's day a little bit, or that griefer or PvP or whatever the person is that is in that encounter. I feel like I've ranted enough about this topic. BuzzCut's video is only about 9 minutes long, so I don't want to make this too much longer than it needs to be. But I think it's important to, call a spade a spade. Call out when people are being a bit dramatic and emotional, and maybe that's his shtick. Maybe that's how, he gets his views. Drama does sell. We all know that Salty might get some good views too. But at the end of the day, I'm just here to provide the other side of that argument and give you guys something to think about. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think down below, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.